Is this a bit of a problem that we've got in the Premier League, that we just have to keep turning the spotlight onto someone new all the time?
Well, he's certainly got plenty to say for himself, hasn't he, Jesse Marsch? There's no
Some
doubt.
of it we've had to bleep out.
Well, yeah, but that's okay. That's it. He's up for the fight. Constantly pointing at his watch. That's his style. But that would have been a hammer blow last night to have lost that game. I thought they played really well against Arsenal. Arsenal hanging on in that match at the weekend. But I think this is Brendan now. I think he's a really good manager, Brendan. I think it was important that he managed to get Fats that came in as a central defender.
Fats, yeah. Played really well last night.
Yeah, I've been saying you've got to have a specialist, in that position. There's no doubt. Indeed, he was playing there for large periods. It affects that compartment of the pitch. And they look much more solid with a back four there. We know, don't we, Harvey Barnes, the quality will come, Vardy back in, and Maddison as well. So it was a matter of time, really, with that sort of quality was going to actually turn it around, Sam, and win a game of football. They've got a very important game coming up against Wolves, who are managerless. And I just think that maybe there's examples here of some of the clubs panicking a little bit. Wolves didn't have anyone lined up to replace their manager, but they're stuck with Brendan. Now, people saying because they can't afford to sack him, I think that was rude and completely off the mark because of how successful he's been there. There's a track record with Brendan, and I think it's going to pay off. I see them now climbing out the bottom three. Haven't quite done it, but that's a huge game now coming up at the weekend. I
said to you on the Game Day podcast that we do on a bi-weekly basis that I didn't think that Leicester would be in a relegation zone because they have too much firepower. The problem has been keeping clean sheets. Well, they've done that a couple of times in quick succession now. Nottingham Forest, Crystal Palace, now against Leeds United. If they do tighten up for the back, do you see them pulling away from danger rather easily?
Yeah, I would have thought so because of the reasons you've mentioned. Obviously, no James Maddison last night, but he's been a real shining light for them this season. Jamie Vardy looked like he was back in the groove. Patson Daka scored some big goals. Harvey Barnes, Dewsbury Hall, they've certainly got the quality at the top end of the pitch. We've expressed our concerns about the goalkeeper, but actually he's kept a couple of clean sheets now in recent home games. And I think at home, Leicester are going to have the ability to outscore teams. I would still worry about their away form, but it's interesting that point you made about managers. Are we too quick to turn the spotlight on them? Really interesting comment from Ralph Hasenhüttl, the Southampton manager, relating to Steven Gerrard's dismissal. Obviously, we heard from Brendan Rodgers. He was disappointed, felt that Steven Gerrard should have been given more time. Ralph Hasenhüttl was of a different perspective. He says it's a pity when a manager loses his job, but when a club do it because they want a better long-term situation, they should do it. I wonder, is he talking about Steven Gerrard or himself?
He's negotiating a way out of St Mary's, you think?
Well, it's interesting because obviously he's a manager who's under a lot of pressure. I think inevitably he probably will part company with the club. It seems a question of when and not if now. Even that win against Bournemouth didn't really allay the fans. We're going to talk about the reaction from the terraces towards him later.
He's a black belt survivor, though, isn't he, Hasenhüttl?
Yeah.
You have to, honestly, what he's living through, the pressure he's under, he keeps coming out and surviving.
Well, they were, up until recently, the only team in the top four divisions of English football that hadn't kept a clean sheet until they played Bournemouth the other day. Was that right?
Yeah, no clean sheet in 17 games, I think, before midweek.
I do feel he's very, very much loved, isn't he, by the hierarchy at that football club. I think they see him as a top manager. Probably
by the
best
chief exec in particular.
Yeah, since Pochettino, they think, he's the right man for the job. And maybe they're right. Maybe it's going to pay off. And maybe we're seeing a little bit of loyalty in this if we look at what Brendan's doing. If you haven't got anybody lined up for the job, and you okay, they've made changes there, haven't they, Southampton? Brought a lot of young players in.
Changed the backroom staff as well.
Yeah, they changed his staff. Clearly, there's no real ambition to get rid of the manager. If he keeps winning, I think he'd be fine.
They've had terrible luck with injury, and another one today, again, coming out of that press conference, Kyle Walker-Peters, who maybe could have been in that massive England potential World Cup squad later today.
It's not
a blow for Southampton. It's a blow for Southampton. Long-term hamstring injury, so that will be his World Cup.
I think we're being
over.
A bit disrespectful, guys. I think Walker-Peters has done all right. I think he's every time I watch.
Why are we being disrespectful? Because he's injured.
Well, when you said it wasn't really that big a loss.
No, I said it's not a big list. The 55 is not that big. We went through it this morning and made the list of all the players.
And he was on it, though, wasn't he?
He was on it,
well, yeah.
But it wasn't a full list. We didn't pick it. We couldn't pick enough players.
Well, we didn't have enough time, that's why. Actually, Gareth Southgate's got that job. We're all so busy covering games left, right and centre, and Gareth sat at home thinking, who's going to get into the squad? Who's going to get into the 11?
Let's refocus back to what we were talking about managers, because managers are a big thing at this moment in time. We're talking about Brendan Rodgers' future. He's been given the patience of the owner and looks as if maybe now they might be turning round the corner. Steve Cooper was given a longer contract by Nottingham Forest. All of a sudden, they've gone back to basics, posted a couple of points on the board. Actually, sometimes now, we're in a situation, as a player, is it unsettling that constantly there's always talk about managers leaving, and actually, are you better off investing in the long-term strategy?
100%. You know, we talk about stability in life. We want it all around us. We want the manager to be consistent in his behaviour, and that can become very difficult. You know, when of course they keep changing the manager. Look at Watford. You know, every time you look at the government right now, we all want stability. You want somebody at the helm for a lengthy period to put their plans together and make it work, and then we can all believe, and it's a calm world that we then live in. And it's no different than at a football club. So, you know, Brendan has got a certain way of working, and he will find his way out of this. There's no doubt about that. You know, to be finishing 5th 2 years on the trot, winning the FA Cup, you know, why? Who else is going to take the job? You know, I mean, a lot of these jobs, if Brendan was ordinarily having his normal season, we'd all be saying, well, Brendan, the Villa job's available now. Maybe that's a job for Brendan. So to have one bad season and then we all jump overboard is, for me a
bad season
overreaction.
Where there was a big influence with the injuries that they had as well. So on that basis, should Leeds be supportive of Jesse Marsch? Under no current pressure, I hear.
Yeah, I was told the same last night. I think they probably should, because obviously they decided to come away from Bielsa. That wasn't a very popular decision with the Leeds fans. Bielsa's got this cult-like status at Elland Road. He kept them up last season. I think we can all agree that if Bielsa had stayed in charge, they would probably have been relegated. They've moulded the squad in his image. They've invested in the transfer market. I think he does need time, to be honest. But the point I was going to make about managers, it fascinates me, because obviously the transfer market now is huge business. The manager transfer market, not so much. There seems to be a reluctance from clubs to pay compensation, £6-7 million for a manager. Surely that's a better investment than paying £6-7 million on a right back.
Don't get it. Don't get it. I'm with you. I don't understand it. The manager's got to be the most important person at the club, because leadership actually breeds success. And if you haven't got a good leader, then you're going to find yourself, no matter how good your players are, without the right plans.
And he'll do well. Jesse Marsch as well, to stay in. It's Fulham next for them, by the way, who just put pay to Steven Gerrard, and then Liverpool, and then Bournemouth. I mean, that could be quite a telling game by the time they get to Bournemouth. If he doesn't win that one, then you start to look around and think, okay, how much longer is he going to be in the job?
It'd be interesting, though, to see how the fans react to it, because last night they were singing Bielsa's name, they were booing Jesse Marsch's team as they came off the pitch. And as we've already heard with Aston Villa, even with Brendan Rodgers in certain sense, as one former Prime Minister said, and we've had quite a few of those recently, when the herd moves, it moves. And that does have an influence, as the Aston Villa fans who have called us today have said. Yeah,
absolutely. And it was the same at Bournemouth on Wednesday night. Even in victory, Southampton fans were still on Ralph Hasenhüttl's case. And I think, particularly once the away fans start to turn, because they're the hardcore, aren't they? So as we saw with Steven Gerrard at Fulham, once the away fans are giving up on you, I think it's very difficult.
But do we have a responsibility to make sure that we don't immediately turn on the managers and say that is the solution? Do you have a responsibility?
Where are you going with this?
I'm just asking.
Well, he does overreact, doesn't he? I mean, it's interesting seeing him chuckle a minute ago. He's looking at all his tweets and everything that's coming in, and look, they're agreeing with this one. They're agreeing with. It's all about you, Alex.
This is talkSPORT.
That's because no one agrees with Martin Keown.
Sam Matterface, Alex Crook, and Martin Keown. We're here through till 1 o'clock this afternoon.
Jim White and Simon Jordan. Monday to Friday mornings from 10 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.